Hello everyone, welcome back to Ceeve Podcast. I'm Ale, I'm the co-founder of Ceeve, the body that helps students and early career people to find the coolest opportunities in the coolest startup worldwide. Today we have a really exciting guest from London, Sonali, designer at siliXon. Welcome, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, I'm good. It's great to be here to have a new episode. I'm really
Yes.
excited.
Very
So
excited.
to start, can you give us your background before joining siliXon?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Canadian designer. I just finished my undergrad at Goldsmiths University. And there I spent my time working on a multitude of projects, ranging from health tech to speculative design, kind of all over the place. In my final year, I was building a robot for dementia patients. And over the summer, I've joined siliXon as their lead designer.
Okay, that's great. And so like you were working in healthcare, like in the healthcare sector? Like you
Not
were
specifically in the healthcare sector, but working on projects that had to do
yeah,
with healthcare. Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. And then so like you were already started to work in hardware, I guess. Like working, I mean
Yeah.
like studying and doing project. And then
Robotics and hardware was always something I found super
okay,
interesting.
yeah,
But I don't have a background in it. It was just something
yeah,
that I was interested in and wanted to learn. So my final year at school, the big project I wanted to take on was building a robot. And I started with pretty much zero hardware skills. The most I had done is maybe code a Raspberry Pi. So going from that to building a robot was definitely quite the
yeah.
learning curve. Um, and so that was a great project. It was really interesting, working on raising grant money for it right now. And then I got an email from a hackathon that I didn't even end up going to, about
Okay.
the startup that does natural language to hardware. And they were looking for engineers, and I'm not an engineer, but I thought, it was interesting from a design perspective, so I reached out, and then from there it's been really great.
Yeah, that's nice. So like everything started from a hackathon, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
And then maybe like, okay, now let's jump on siliXon as well. Can you maybe tell like in few words, what does it do, how it works?
Yeah, so siliXon is a relatively new startup, and they're taking natural language, so plain English, and turning it into a manufacturable circuit board. So if you have an idea, and this could be anything, say I want to build a drone, you can type that into their chat. Their agent will go find all the components, find all the pieces you would need, and it'll create like a little schematic for you, which can then be, turned into manufacturable files and then sent directly to you. So it's making hardware very accessible for people who don't have that hardware knowledge, and also making the workflow easy for people who maybe are already in hardware but don't want to have to spend so much time on PCB design, which is something that historically is quite costly and lengthy.
Yeah, and then like you're focusing on a specific sector, or is like hardware in general, and it can be
Hardware in
applied to any.
general,
Okay, that's great.
we've been in beta now for a few weeks, and we've been looking at people's sessions and what kind of projects they've been taking on, and they're
Yeah.
all over the board. It's a range of
Okay.
things, which is really cool.
Yeah, of course. And then like I want to talk about the point you were saying, because your product works for people that never heard about design
Mhm.
and for people that are expert and they need like maybe some extra support. And you like that you're working as designer. How does it work for you? Like you have to be able to design something that works, that is easy to understand to me, that I have no clue about hardware or engineering in general, and at the same time for someone that is really expert.
Yeah, it's been an interesting challenge because, we're looking to be the Lovable for hardware.
Yeah.
In the same way that Lovable has made software very accessible to hobbyists and people who have no software knowledge, we want to do the same for hardware. But the real issue lies in the fact that, software is something that's instantly validatable by looking at it, right? If I go and I say I want to create a website and I generate up a website, it is very easy for me to tell that the website is or is not working, just by clicking around and looking at it, because I can see whether it matches or doesn't match my vision. In terms of hardware, it's a very distinct problem because it's not something that I can look at as a beginner and say, yes, this is how it should look or this is how it should work,
Yeah.
because I don't know. So through the use of, again, plain language and having the agent kind of walk the user through it, um, And, just trying to figure out how we can set up the UI to be something that's very inviting and friendly for somebody who doesn't have a hardware background. Because I guess the other part of this problem is that generally UI for these types of tools is very complex. We want to make it as simple as possible. So those are kind of the things that I've been looking at as I start to redesign the platform, which has been really, really neat and great to get lots of feedback from people as they use it.
Yeah, that makes sense because I think like it has two different goals, and like to me, like I think you have to give me very easy messages because I have no clue about anything in general,
Yeah.
and then maybe to someone expert, like you can jump like you can skip the basics and then just go like more in the direction of what you have to do next. But then
Mhm.
like until which point do you arrive like with your product, like you give like the project how it should be built and which type of different maybe items you have to put together, and then stop, or like you go also further to that and maybe you, I don't know, like you can provide some supplier contact or something else.
Yeah, so I mean, we have partnerships with the
Yeah.
platform itself that we send the boards to for manufacturing. But you can get the files and do it yourself in theory. Um, but it's interesting because I mean, like you spin in, you put in your prompt, it spins up this board, and you can see where the different components are. You can see how it's routed, so you can see like where the wires are, what's connected to what. It'll explain what each component does. So it's explaining every step. So ultimately, the people who are beginners can eventually start to understand what they're doing and learn. So not only is it providing the service, it's also providing education.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think I see really the point of making that accessible to everyone, because now, like as you were saying, Lovable and Replit and other players say like they're doing that for software. Now
Mhm.
everyone can build their own software, but on the other side, like there is still much everyone should learn on how to do it, and hardware is one thing. So, and then like your typical target customer, because I know that you divide in people that are not expert and people that are expert, but are like professional, or also I don't know, young students that just want to build something on their own. Like, do you have data on that already, or too early?
Right now, it's been a range of people who have been trying it out. There are some people who are, more students because we've put this out in a lot of like hackathon groups and hobbyist groups. Um, and just in terms of like our friends and stuff who are using the platform may not have a hardware background. But we've also got people who are professional engineers using it. So it's kind of a range. But our main target audience right now is at a hobbyist audience, because I think that's the most untapped market in terms of people
Yeah,
creating hardware.
yeah, that makes sense. And then maybe like, can you tell me like what's been like harder than expected when you started to work as designer in siliXon, like in this type of product as well, like not only in terms of the company?
I mean, it's an interesting field to be in as a designer because it's not generally something that's necessarily creative. Um, and I think that was something that
Yeah,
scared me a lot when I was in school, is like the role of a designer in fields that are not inherently design led. Because generally, when you think of a designer's role, you think of them in places like fashion or, with actual physical products that already exist. And then it's just a matter of making it look nice and the aesthetics, and you're working on a team with other designers. And in this case, I'm the only creative on the team, which is
yeah,
daunting and it's hard because I'm having to figure it out for myself. And I don't even fully understand the product because I'm not an engineer. I'm the hobbyist in this case. Like I'm the only person on the team really who doesn't understand electronics and is kind of learning on the job. So for me, it's difficult because I don't necessarily know everything and how it works. I'm really looking at this with a more holistic view and figuring out like and providing the view of the hobbyist as we go and iterate on it and being okay with that. I think it's been something I've had to accept and use to my advantage. It's not necessarily a weakness to not know. And if anything, I think it's a strength because it's allowing me to learn and get into the shoes of our users.
yeah. I think that like that was what I was going to say, that I think it's like also on the other side a really great competitive advantage, because you
Mhm.
like you have to try to make the user understand, and if you don't have that knowledge, for you it's not even obvious, so like you are more closer to the customer need. And then that's why, like, another point I wanted to ask, how close you are to customer needs. Like, now you are in beta, you were saying, and you are receiving like feedback maybe every day. How you are in contact with them? Like, do you do some one-to-one, or it's more like Google form to submit?
We've been so lucky that our users are so engaged with the platform. So a lot of them have been willing to talk to us, send in their, concerns and, ideas directly to us. We have a Discord, so we get a lot of our users giving us feedback that way, or over email. We've also been so lucky as to host a couple sessions where we have people actually come physically to us and we have
Okay.
them use the product. We order pizza, and it's a good shout, and we get a lot of feedback that way. So it's nice to actually sit with somebody and have a face-to-face conversation with them. And I think as a designer, like my main job beyond making things look nice is people, right?
Yeah.
Talking to people, engaging with people, understanding people. And the best way to understand them is to witness them.
Yeah, because I think there's still, like, even if maybe, like, as you were saying, we are talking about hardware and maybe also like complex hardware that is not like doing a website or like building a software, but there's still like human behavior that plays a role there. And so I think as long as you can be close to the customer, then like I'm sure you will find, like, in the long term, more like a typical type of customer, like a student trying to build something, or a professional really their own startup and they need like hardware. So I think you will definitely do. But then in terms of, like, siliXon is, like, we can call it a startup. They just started, and for you, like, you just came out from studying, that was always the dream job, like working in that type of environment, or maybe at the beginning you wanted a more structured environment?
I'd say Goldsmiths was the least structured degree ever. It
Okay.
was just project after project after project,
Okay.
and their kind of basis is that you're meant to be very free and explore. So it really, set the groundwork for going into something
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
very non-traditional. So in my mind, I've always liked the idea of doing something that allows me to have a bit more flexibility. Less corporate. It's a bit like I mean, there's 8 of us, so it's very familial feeling. Going into the office is always fun. We get lunch together. It's like it feels like hanging out with your friends more than it does work, which I personally really enjoy. And you're so close to the product too. You're not on a big team working on minutia. You're there. You're kind of the founding team, and you're working on things that are actively being used by people in real time,
Yeah.
which to me is really neat and I really appreciate. Um, so yeah, no, I love the startup life, and
Yeah.
I think it's so much fun.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And then, like, how many people are you in the team right now?
8. There's 8 of
8.
us.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, still early stage, but like not just started. But then, like, one question about design that I missed before was that, like, like what usually people say is that you have to launch and then, like, not spending time in adding features or changing the color of like some part of the website, and, like, yeah, like wasting time on these type of things that maybe don't really make a difference. What's your thought on that? Like, what's your opinion? Do you think that in your role that's true, like you have to focus on something else, or not?
It's a bit of both. I mean, aesthetics is one small part of my job. There's also the user experience. There's
Yeah.
also, the research and the user kind of research as well. But right now, I mean, today I've been working on the website and effectively making things look nice and making the interactions look really cool and the buttons the right color. So I'd say it's a bit of a balance between both. Some days are spent kind of completely in the conceptual and looking at how we want a user to engage with the product. But on the other side, I think the aesthetics and how something looks is also very important, because that's what's going to get a user to stay. And I think
Yeah.
that's the reason that, with products like Lovable, and some of these other AI tools that have come onto the market, the ones that look really nice are generally the ones that the users are using, because when they, step into it or they open it up, it just looks simple and it looks nice. And I think even if they're not necessarily judging it based on that, I think subconsciously that's what draws them to another product. So
Yeah.
it's a balance.
Yeah, of course. But then, like, I was curious to understand, um, what's the challenge for you, like as designer in this type of a company? How can you? Because, like, of course, like you can understand how your work is going, maybe talking with customer. But beyond that, do you have any other extra data that you can keep track of, or I don't know how, like, can you maybe tell us how it works for you, um, understanding your own performance? Like if what you are doing today, like today you change some aspect of the website, tomorrow is going to make a change, yes or no? Like how do you see that?
We can see data and analytics on the site. So we
Okay.
can see what people are using, what's working, what's not. A/B testing is a big part of that. There's different ways to, analyze those benchmarks and see what's working and what's not in terms of, UI and UX. So we can see, like, we had a video that's currently on our homepage right now. Are
Okay.
people watching it in full? How long are they spending watching that video, or are they scrolling right by it? In which case, then we can use that real estate for something that's more, helpful. Um, so other than talking to people, we can see the actual raw
Yeah.
data of what people are using, what's working, what's not, what's retaining people versus what's kind of pushing them away. Are they getting to a certain part on the site and then dropping off, with the onboarding? Are they getting through onboarding? If they're not, then how can we get them back? So we can see where we're losing people as well. So the people that aren't even necessarily talking to us, we can see what's
Yeah, of
wrong.
course. But then how much time do you need to like wait before understanding if like your change as designer worked out or not? Like
At this stage,
I
it's
think it
difficult because
depends.
it's only
Yeah.
been live for a bit. So it kind of depends on
Yeah.
what it is. If it's something like an onboarding flow and we're looking at, how to get customers onboarded, and we see that pretty reliably our first 100 users aren't getting past the onboarding stage, well, then you've got a bit of a problem, right? You can see based on certain metrics if a pretty substantial amount of people are falling off or, aren't being retained, then it's probably something that needs to be fixed. If it's like a 50-50 split, it's still probably an issue. So you want to just make sure that as people are going through, you can have your kind of one-off cases where, maybe somebody got a call for their mom and then they never came back to the onboarding
Yeah.
flow. And that's kind of like a freak case, right?
Yeah.
But, generally you can see if it's 20, 30 people are going through and you're seeing kind of a consistent issue, then you can pretty easily identify where your blockers are.
Okay.
There's a good UX principle that it's, all you need is 8 people to,
Okay.
get a good piece of data. Once you talk to 8 people, you're going to start to have repeat answers.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that's good to know. And then in terms of like, do you take some inspiration from other maybe websites or maybe other apps, like even if they're maybe totally different and they're not related to what you guys are building right now, but it helps you to get some ideas?
Of course, great artists steal. So
Yeah.
it's been, in terms of our UI, I've been looking at things like legacy software, so other creative software that aren't necessarily for circuit board design. So the Adobe suite has been really good. Figma, a lot of these creative softwares that I actually use on a regular basis, but have these really intuitive workflows that have been around for at least a decade, if not longer, that have done it. I feel like, if it works, it works. And that's a good kind of basis that we've been using as we think about some of these flows. And, to me, that just felt like an intuitive place to start because it's software that is very usable for a beginner. I know a lot of people who have never opened Photoshop before, open it for the
Yeah.
first time and are able to go and create something, right? So for me, that seemed like the most logical draw. In terms of things like colors and, aesthetic inspiration, a lot of it comes from like, things that I see in real life. Some of it comes from fashion. And not all of it is even software. I think a lot of my inspiration comes just as I see things. I'm on Pinterest and Twitter and LinkedIn all the time, so I'm constantly saving things that I think are interesting. I'm a photographer as well, so again, like I just like to collect little bits of things that I like, and then when I have a project that I can channel it into, that makes me really happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think, like, generally speaking, like, people working in a startup, usually they need to spend some time not doing not doing anything and looking around, because what makes them like the idea or like how to solve a problem. And I think for a designer even more, maybe, because you need to
Hmm.
have like continuous inspiration, creativity also to like bring on the like on the table and be able to put in practice the day after. And then maybe like I was curious to understand your typical day, how it looks like. I know it's very hard to like do, but like do you start maybe from like a meeting with the rest of the team, and then there is a priority and then you work on that, or like you have your own priorities set for the week?
It's a bit of both. I wouldn't say any day is the same. I'd say it's a bit all over the place. Sometimes I work from home, sometimes I'm in the office, depends what my workflow is that day. But we generally try to talk in the morning what we're all working on, what our goals are, what we want to accomplish for the day, the week, what our closest benchmarks are. Um, and then from that, I mean, we're kind of just chatting throughout the day. As we come up with something, we'll change our to-do lists. I know a lot of the engineering team, they have their own kind of workflow set up. I'm a bit separate from that. But based on what they need, I kind of work around that. And then if they don't necessarily need anything super imminently, then I can work on my own workflow. And,
Okay.
I've got my own to-do list of things that I want to finish by a certain
Okay.
time.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because also I think like being maybe the only, as you were saying before, designer or creative person in the team, then makes also like your day looks different compared to the rest of the team,
Yeah.
I guess.
No, there's a lot of times that they're doing, things that sound incredibly important, and I'm sitting there making animations or merch. So my
Yeah,
my
but
workflow
still,
is certainly very
but
different from theirs.
yeah, but I think like honestly, like not only because we are talking together, but like if then everything's super complex and the other person on the other side doesn't understand, then it's useless. So like your role as well is super important. Like as could be like for your team, like marketing, it's always like important as the engineer in the team, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. And then in terms of like, let's go like to one very hot topic nowadays, that AI, big AI players can replace every type of AI tools. So like Claude Design can replace well tomorrow if they want. That's what people say. What's your perspective on that? Like, do you think there is a line of truth, or maybe in some extent?
I think so. I mean, yes and no. But I think there's merit to having these smaller tools, because I mean the same could be said about Adobe, right? Like the
Yeah,
Adobe suite could really knock out every other player because they're the biggest and they have the most money. But Canva and Figma and these other tools
yeah,
still do really well. And I mean, while those are obviously big players now, at one point they weren't, and at one point they were much smaller. So I think there's always merit for everybody, like for other smaller players, they're not necessarily competing against the big companies, because the big companies do it differently and they do it within their scope. Smaller companies kind of have their own thing. It's a smaller team, right? We're interacting more with our users. I think it's different.
yeah. That makes sense because like I think it's a topic that like everyone is discussing in different sectors. Like in legal, there are many like AI legal companies like Legora, for instance, and then people say, okay, but like Claude can do Claude legal tomorrow. There is already something, I guess, and like why should I choose Legora instead of Claude? But then if you look at Legora, it's growing a lot, so it's not true that everyone goes to Claude. But yeah, like I was curious to understand also from your perspective, because like I'm one of the person that believes that like as long as you are very vertical and very maybe also niche, then you can win. um but that's like a fair point. But then how do you use AI like as designer, like which in which type of process?
I've always been in the camp that AI is a tool for designers. And, I have a lot of peers who either don't believe in it at all, but I've also got peers who put everything through AI and AI is their whole workflow. So
Okay, okay.
I have a bit of a balance. I think that, AI is not going to replace designers. They're most certainly not anytime soon. I think it's a great time to be a designer in tech. Um, I have a bit of a hybrid process. So it starts off very analog. So talking to people, taking my own notes, sketching in my sketchbook, and drawing out my own little diagrams and thinking through the problem and thinking about how I would want to approach it. Then I translate that into Figma. And Figma, I'll go in, I'll create some low fidelity wireframes, create many versions of that, and then get feedback. Well, okay, if I have a sample group of a few people, like, which ones do they like? What do they not like? Which flow intuitively makes the most sense for them? Once I narrow down on that, then I can start just like deciding things like, font and color and, spacing and what kind of aesthetic I want it to have. And then once I have those kind of fundamentals laid out, then I can move it into something like Claude Design, or these other AI tools,
Okay.
and I can start iterating from that because it just makes things so much faster, right? I could sit there, sure, inside of Figma and make every single interaction myself, but it would take me a month, 2 months, if not longer,
Yeah.
versus I can drop it into Claude Design. And more likely than not, the first output is going to be complete slop. The first 10 outputs are going to be complete slop. But I can slowly start to kind of chip away at it and iterate on it until I have something that I'm happy with.
Okay.
And that's been a pretty good process. And in terms of handing it off to developers, I mean, it's automatically being translated into code. So it does make that handoff a bit easier than just giving them something like straight from Figma. So it's a bit of a balance, but I do notice that I flip between the two quite a bit, right? When I'm thinking about something conceptually, I want to do it analog because it's something that deals with the person. When I'm, just quickly iterating, then Claude is a great place to kind of work from because I can just like quickly, like rapidly iterate
Okay.
on ideas that I have and then, kind of feed between the two. So to me, like I think AI has been pretty good for my workflow because it makes me
Yeah.
work a lot faster and I can output things, much quicker and much more efficiently.
But then, like you were saying, you get feedback from some people before maybe launching, and to understand which one they prefer. But these type of people are users or like your team or
Users, teammates, friends, family. It could be,
okay. Everyone, yeah.
I ask the opinions of my friends and my family as well because they are hobbyists. Like I know my dad for sure. He's
Yeah, of
been
course.
bugging me and he's telling me, well, when you feel the product is in a good place, I want to go make something. So, he's been really interested in the process. So,
Yeah.
getting that kind of feedback is I think equally valuable to having a real live test group. But no, I think, it's a bit from
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, and then like there is no like that's like a very like personal curiosity. Like there is no way of doing like some simulation of human behavior in terms of design. Like if you launch like a feature or maybe you change the website totally, you can't run based on the behavior of previous users to understand how it will work or not. Like maybe it's very I'm dreaming, but
I mean, to some extent, yeah. I mean, like not necessarily like creating an agent that acts as your users. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I can sort of start to inference based on what prior users have been saying and like their previous feedback. Like we did a
okay.
session before we changed the UI at all. And so I had a big stack of booklets that I had created that I had them fill in like little workbooks. And they filled those in. And so I had a pretty good sense of like what they were thinking as they went through using the software. So then I can apply those same thoughts, to my new design and use that as a basis. But generally I am designing based on that feedback, so it's kind of already integrated in there. Uh, but I think, people you can design something completely based on feedback. But if somebody looks at it and they're like, no, it's still not right. I mean, like you're talking to people who are non-designers, so they don't necessarily know how to translate some of these raw thoughts into design
Yeah.
insights. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of me also having to figure out how you can bridge the gap from A to B.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, because like to me, like that maybe was one part that AI can like help a lot, like in simulating feedback as well. Because I
Yeah.
guess, like at least from my own experience, when you like ask people feedback, it can be even your best friend, but that's like maybe you can say, "Oh, that's nice," so that's not nice. But then if you ask more questions, they will never fill out the form for sure. And your family as well maybe sometimes, so it's really like challenging to get feedback. But I guess like what you guys are doing also in terms of community on Discord and really like being close to the real users, then that solves the issue, I guess. So yeah, that's really exciting. So I'm sure like as you were saying, I don't see like AI can replace many things, but like human mind still matters until now, at least. So it's like that cannot be replaced, and your creativity when you try to like build something new, like that cannot be replaced, and it comes from everything you see every day. It can be from supermarket, I guess, as well. So so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Only a human can design things for humans.
Yeah,
That's my
that's
take.
yeah, that's a good take. And yeah, that maybe now like we are closer to the conclusion. I just want like first of all one tool that you cannot live without.
A
Like
sketchbook. I
okay,
think,
okay, that's
you know,
nice.
good old pen and paper. I think that's the best tool that anybody can have. Like, yes,
Yeah,
you know,
that's great.
Claude is great, Photoshop is great, a laptop is great, but I think there's something about being able to physically hold and
Yeah.
draw something out that's very valuable.
Okay, that's good because usually people answer Claude right now. So like it's good that someone answers something different.
Close second. That's a close
Yeah, yeah,
second.
yeah,
But
yeah. Yeah, but of course, but like we have to start from something more from real life. That's great. And then like the best piece of advice that you have got in your very early career so far,
I
or it
think
could be yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
don't be afraid to do something that you don't know much about. I think you can always learn.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for what you were saying before. That you are like learning by doing, like in a field that maybe you didn't have that much knowledge before. So
Mhm.
that's great. And do you think like what could you say to a student studying design right now that doesn't know, like that it's really unsure about the future, that it doesn't know if it makes more sense to go in a corporate startup or another type of companies, what they should do, like how they can understand what they like?
For me, the biggest thing I think I did, and I'm really glad that I did, was do so much networking when I was still a student. You know, I deleted Instagram a long time ago, so my favorite social media was LinkedIn. So I spent a lot of time reaching out to people with jobs I thought were really cool. And through talking to them and kind of understanding their experiences, I learned what actually sounded interesting to me versus what didn't. And I realized that working in a corporate job didn't sound as interesting to me as working on something that was a much smaller team. So I think a lot of it is just kind of, you know, just reach out to people and talk to people and ask for a coffee chat. I feel like more often than not, people are willing to speak to you as a student and
Yeah.
offer some advice. So the biggest piece of advice I would give to a young designer is don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like I think more often than not, you're going to get a response and maybe get a piece of advice and it may end up changing your whole trajectory.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of like job application process, since like we CV also, we talk about this topic in general, like how does it work for a designer? Like, do you like send your CV or do you send like your portfolio? Like how
More generally, it's a portfolio. So you'll
portfolio? Yeah.
have kind of a collection of works and stuff that you've worked on. But I mean, anytime I've gotten a job, it's mostly been through being at an event and talking about the work that I'm working on, or connecting with somebody that is working on something that's similar to maybe a project that I'm also kind of interested or actively working on, or something that I've done in the past. And so anytime that I've gotten a job, I don't think I've ever had to send in a CV or a portfolio.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
mostly been, you know, just through conversation. And then later down the line, obviously, then I'll go and I'll send my portfolio. But mostly, again, it's just through networking and connections.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then like one quick thing, siliXon is hiring right now. Like you are expanding the team, or for now, but that maybe you don't.
Um,
That if you know or if you can share.
I don't believe
No,
so,
it's fine.
but
It's fine.
don't quote me on that.
No, no.
I think maybe in the future. Right now, I do know we've had a lot of students reach out to us and we haven't said yes. I think if it's maybe something that is like the perfect fit, then maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that
I
makes
don't
sense.
know.
No, of course, of course. And then, like, if you can do another shout out to like someone that you know, it can be a founder, it can be someone else like in the founding team or working another startup that you think we should reach out to. You can take
Hmm.
your time, like no rush.
Does it have to be somebody who's like on the younger side, or could it be somebody who's,
Can be
you know, like
anyone.
older
Like
as
usually
well?
we want people building something super cool. So like everyone that is building something cool, or by like building or working in something cool, then
Working on something really cool. My like this is a big company. They just raised, I think, upwards of 150 million for
Right.
their Series A. But I've known a lot of the team since they were, a team of like 10 people. Humanoid in the UK
Okay,
is doing
okay.
some
Yeah, I
really,
know
really
them. Yeah.
cool stuff. Like their stuff is really neat. And
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that they're bringing robotics to the UK, and I think their team is really
Yeah.
lovely. Everyone I've spoken to has been really great. Um, so I think
That's nice.
anybody from there would be super
Yeah.
cool to talk to.
Yeah, of course.
That's really, really great team, really lovely
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I've been heard very, very good things about that. So it's great. Yeah, I mean, I think we got to the conclusion. Like, I think first of all, like, thank you so much for being here today, Sonali. Like, it was great to
Yeah,
having
of
you
course.
here and learning more about your experience, and that you have been also like very optimistic about the future of AI, which is good because nowadays everyone is saying the opposite. So it's great to hear that. Yeah, thank you so much, first of all. And then for people listening to the podcast, thank you so much for being here as well. And you can find the link of siliXon on the description, then the contact Sonali as well. And then for instead of Ceeve, there are more than 7,000 opportunities for startups worldwide that you can apply right now. So feel free to do it. And yeah, that's all for today. So thank you so much, guys, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.